The spaceship landed quietly on the Earth campus with a soft hum. 3 alien beings stepped out, each wearing thick protective suits that covered their entire bodies. They looked around nervously at the strange new world they had traveled so far to see. Veltar was the first to speak through his translator device. His crystal body sparkled blue inside his environmental suit. "The atmosphere readings are disturbing," he said in a worried voice. "The temperature keeps changing every few minutes." Kix floated beside him in a water-filled suit that let her move on land. Her tentacles moved anxiously inside the clear container. "The pressure here is crushing," she whispered. "How do any creatures survive in such harsh conditions?" Neth drifted nearby, his gas-like form contained in a special chamber. "The air currents are completely wild," he said with fear. "They have no pattern at all. This place is truly a death world." The 3 aliens had come to Earth as part of a new program between different worlds. For the first time ever, students would visit the planet that all other species called a Hellworld. Most aliens believed Earth was too dangerous for any civilized being to visit. But the Galactic Education Consortium wanted to learn more about humans and their strange planet. A group of human students walked toward them from a large building. The aliens watched in shock as these creatures moved around without any protective gear at all. They were just walking in the open air like it was completely safe. Jihoon was the first human to reach them. He was a tall young man with short black hair and a bright smile. "Welcome to Seoul National University," he said happily. "I'm Jihoon. I study marine biology here." The aliens stared at him in amazement. This human was standing in the deadly atmosphere without any protection. Worse, he seemed completely relaxed about it. Yeri joined them next. She was a cheerful young woman with long dark hair tied back. "Hello, I'm Yeri. I study anthropology." "We're so excited to have you here," she said warmly. Taewon arrived last, carrying a heavy backpack. He was a sturdy young man with kind eyes. "I'm Taewon," he said. "I study rocks and mountains. This is going to be amazing." Veltar's voice shook as he spoke. You are not wearing any protective equipment," he observed. "Are you not afraid of the toxic atmosphere?" Jihoon looked confused. "Toxic? It's just a normal spring day. The weather is actually pretty nice today." Kix's tentacles curled with worry inside her suit. "Nice? The pressure readings show this environment would crush most life forms." Yeri smiled gently. "I think there might be some misunderstanding. Let's get you settled in your rooms first. Then we can talk more." The humans led the aliens toward the campus buildings. With each step, the visitors became more amazed and frightened. They saw human students everywhere, all walking around without any protection. Some humans were even sitting outside on benches just relaxing in the open air. "Look at them," Neth whispered to his companions. "They act like this place is safe." As they walked, a light breeze started blowing. The aliens immediately panicked and checked their suits for damage. But the humans just kept walking normally. Some even seemed to enjoy the moving air. "Wind alert," Veltar announced urgently. "All beings should seek shelter immediately." Taewon laughed softly. "It's just a breeze. Actually, it feels nice after sitting in class all morning." The aliens could not believe what they were hearing. These humans were treating deadly weather phenomena like pleasant experiences. They reached the special building that had been prepared for the alien visitors. It had been modified with extra life support systems and emergency equipment. But even this safe building seemed incredibly dangerous to the aliens because it was still on the surface of the Hellworld. Inside, the humans showed them to their rooms. Each room had been specially designed for the different alien species. Veltar's room had stable lighting and temperature controls. Kix's room had a large water tank. Neth's room had carefully controlled air systems. "We tried to make everything as comfortable as possible," Yeri explained. "If you need anything changed, just let us know." Veltar looked around his room nervously. "This will have to do," he said, "though I do not understand how you built anything permanent on such an unstable planet." Jihoon scratched his head in confusion. "Unstable? Seoul is actually pretty stable compared to some places." "You mean there are places on this world that are even more dangerous?" Kix asked in horror. "Well," Taewon said thoughtfully, "I guess some places have more earthquakes or volcanoes, but people live there too." The aliens looked at each other in shock. Not only did humans live on this Hellworld, but some places were even worse and humans lived there as well. That evening, the humans invited their guests to have dinner together. The aliens watched in fascination and terror as the humans ate their food. The humans put hot liquid into their mouths on purpose. They ate plants that made their faces turn red. They even seemed to enjoy these painful experiences. This burning sensation in your mouth, Veltar asked carefully. This is not an emergency. Yeri smiled as she ate her spicy soup. No, it's just kimchi. I love spicy food. You love pain? Kix asked in disbelief. It's not really pain, Jihoon explained. It's more like excitement for your taste buds. The aliens could not understand this concept at all. On their worlds, pain was always a warning of danger, but humans seemed to seek it out for fun. As the night went on, the humans shared more about their daily lives. They talked about swimming in moving water with waves. They mentioned climbing mountains for recreation. They described traveling to places with extreme temperatures just to see them. Each story made the aliens more amazed and confused. These humans were not just surviving on their Hellworld. They were exploring it, enjoying it, and even finding it beautiful. Tomorrow we'll show you around the campus, Taewon said as dinner ended. Maybe we can visit the ocean if the weather is good. The aliens went to their rooms that night with their minds full of questions. They had come to Earth expecting to study how humans barely survived on their dangerous planet. Instead, they were discovering that humans did not just survive here. They seemed to love living here. Veltar lay in his specially controlled room listening to the wind outside. On his homeworld, any change in air movement meant danger. But here, humans called it nice weather. Kix floated in her tank, thinking about the humans who swam in wild oceans. On her world, water was always calm and safe. The idea of moving water had always been terrifying. Neth drifted in his chamber, confused by everything he had seen. These humans were unlike any species he had ever heard of. They lived in conditions that would kill most other beings, and they called it home. All three aliens fell asleep wondering the same thing. What kind of creatures were these humans, and how had they become so strange and wonderful? The next morning brought new horrors for the alien visitors. They had barely slept because of the strange sounds outside their rooms. What humans called traffic sounded like constant explosions to alien ears. The noise of wind in the trees seemed like approaching disaster. Jihoon arrived early to take them to their first classes. He carried a steaming cup in his hands and took sips from it regularly. The aliens watched in fascination as he drank the boiling liquid without any sign of pain. What is that burning liquid? Veltar asked nervously. Coffee, Jihoon replied happily. Want some? It helps me wake up. Kix's tentacles recoiled in horror. You are drinking water that is hot enough to cook food. Well, yeah, Jihoon said with a laugh. That's how coffee works. The hot water extracts the flavor from the beans. The aliens looked at each other in amazement. This human was voluntarily consuming liquid at temperatures that would damage most life forms, and he seemed to enjoy it. They made their way to the first classroom where Yeri was waiting. She was eating something that made her face turn bright red and her eyes water, but instead of seeking medical help, she smiled and kept eating. Good morning, she said cheerfully, wiping tears from her eyes. Sorry, I'm having breakfast. These peppers are really good today. Neth's gaseous form swirled anxiously in his container. Your body is producing distress signals, he observed. Your eyes are leaking and your face has changed color. Should we call for medical assistance? Harry laughed and took another bite. No, I'm fine. I just love spicy food. The spicier the better. Veltar's crystal body dimmed with confusion. You are deliberately causing yourself pain. For pleasure? It's not really pain, Yeri explained. It's more like intensity. It makes the food more interesting. Taewon joined them carrying a heavy bag full of rock samples. His clothes were dirty and he had small cuts on his hands from handling sharp stones. To the aliens, he looked like a survivor of some terrible accident. Sorry I'm late, he said. I was collecting samples from the construction site. They're digging deep and found some interesting formations. Kix stared at his injured hands. You are bleeding, she pointed out urgently. This is a medical emergency. Taewon looked at his hands and shrugged. Just small scratches from the rocks. Nothing serious, the aliens could not believe it. This human was injured and acting like it was completely normal. On their worlds, any injury required immediate medical attention and rest. During their first class, the professor asked Hyeri to share her research project. She stood up and began talking about her recent field work in desert regions. The aliens listened in growing horror as she described her experiences. I spent 3 months in the Sahara Desert studying nomadic cultures, she said proudly. The temperature reached 50 degrees Celsius during the day, but the people there have such interesting ways of adapting to their environment. Veltar's translator device made alarming beeping sounds. 50 degrees? He repeated weakly. That temperature would melt most known life forms. It was pretty hot, Yeri admitted, but you get used to it. And the sunsets were absolutely beautiful. The professor nodded approvingly. Excellent work, Yeri. Extreme environment research always provides the most valuable insights. Kix's tentacles writhed in distress inside her suit. Extreme environment research? She whispered. They study dangerous places on purpose? The class continued with other students sharing their projects. One student had studied wildlife in the Amazon rainforest, where the humidity was so high it would drown most aliens. Another had researched Arctic communities, where temperatures were cold enough to freeze alien biology solid. Each presentation revealed more about human attitudes toward their planet. They did not just survive in these terrible places. They went there by choice to learn and explore. During lunch, the humans took their alien guests to the cafeteria. The aliens watched in amazement as humans chose from dozens of different foods. Many of these foods would be toxic to alien biology. Others required extreme temperatures to prepare. Jihoon selected a bowl of soup that was still bubbling hot. Steam rose from the surface like dangerous vapors, but he sat down and began eating it normally. Is your mouth not burning? Veltar asked in concern. A little, Jihoon said between spoonfuls. But I like it hot. Cold soup doesn't taste as good. Yeri chose a salad with raw vegetables. The aliens knew that most species could not digest raw plant matter safely, but humans seemed to prefer many of their foods uncooked. Taewon picked spicy noodles that made him sweat and breathe heavily, yet he smiled as he ate them, clearly enjoying the experience. Your food choices seem designed to cause suffering, Neth observed. Not suffering, Taewon explained. Just sensation. Food that makes you feel something is more satisfying. After lunch, they attended a geology lecture where Taewon was presenting his research. He showed pictures of active volcanoes that he had visited and studied. The aliens gasped in horror at the images of lava and explosive eruptions. You went inside those fire mountains? Kix asked in disbelief. Not inside, Taewon corrected. Just close enough to collect samples and take measurements. You have to be careful, but it's amazing to see geological processes in action. The professor added more disturbing information. Taewon's volcano research is part of our monitoring program, she explained. We track volcanic activity to help protect the millions of people who live near active volcanoes. Veltar's crystal form flickered with shock. Millions of people live near exploding mountains? About 10% of all humans live within danger zones of active volcanoes, the professor said casually. Many of our largest cities are built near volcanic areas because the soil is very fertile. The aliens could not process this information. Humans knowingly built their homes next to geological disasters. They raised their children in places that could explode at any moment, and they considered this normal. After classes, the humans suggested showing their guests around the city. The aliens reluctantly agreed, though they insisted on keeping their environmental suits at maximum protection. Walking through Seoul was a nightmare experience for the visitors. Everywhere they looked, humans were doing impossible things. Children played outside in the uncontrolled atmosphere. Adults exercised by running through the dangerous air. Elderly humans sat peacefully in parks surrounded by unpredictable weather. Look at those young humans, Neth pointed at a playground. They are climbing dangerous structures and jumping from heights. That's just playing, Jihoon explained. Kids need physical activity to grow strong. You train your offspring for survival by exposing them to danger? Veltar asked. We call it having fun, Yeri said with a smile. The aliens watched as human children swung from bars, slid down steep slopes, and ran around at high speeds. On alien worlds, young beings were kept in carefully controlled environments until they were fully mature. But human children seemed to thrive on risky activities. As evening approached, the group returned to campus. The aliens were exhausted from their first full day of experiencing human life. Everything they had seen challenged their understanding of how intelligent life should behave. In their rooms that night, the three visitors tried to process what they had learned. Humans did not just survive on their Hellworld. They seemed to actively seek out the most dangerous and uncomfortable experiences possible. They ate burning food, visited exploding mountains, and trained their children through physical risk. Veltar recorded his observations in his daily report. Human behavior appears completely irrational. They deliberately expose themselves to harmful conditions and claim to enjoy the experience. Kix wrote, "These creatures must have evolved very different survival instincts. What we consider emergency situations, they treat as normal daily activities." Neth noted, "Humans seem to have no concept of safety as understood by civilized species. Yet they continue to thrive and reproduce successfully." All three aliens were beginning to realize that their visit to Earth would change their understanding of life itself. These humans were unlike any species they had ever imagined. They lived in ways that should be impossible, yet they seemed happier and more energetic than most beings from safer worlds. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and discoveries. The aliens could only hope they would survive long, enough to understand what made these incredible creatures so different from everyone else in the galaxy. The third day brought the worst weather the aliens had ever experienced. Dark clouds covered the sky and the wind grew stronger every hour. The alien visitors huddled in their rooms, monitoring their emergency equipment and preparing for what they were sure would be a planetary disaster. Veltar checked his environmental suit 3 times. "The atmospheric pressure is dropping rapidly," he announced to his companions through their communication system. "This appears to be a major weather catastrophe." Kix's tentacles were wrapped tightly around herself inside her water tank. "The wind speeds are reaching dangerous levels," she reported. "We should evacuate to orbit immediately." Neth's gaseous form was compressed into the smallest possible space in his chamber. "My readings show a massive storm system approaching. This could destroy the entire region." But when they looked outside their windows, they saw something impossible. Human students were still walking around campus. Some had umbrellas or raincoats, but they were not evacuating. They were going to classes as if nothing unusual was happening. Ji-hoon knocked on their doors and entered with his usual cheerful smile. He was wearing a light jacket and seemed completely unconcerned about the approaching apocalypse. "Good morning," he said happily. "Looks like we're getting a typhoon today. Perfect timing, actually. I wanted to show you some interesting weather phenomena." The aliens stared at him in horror. "Typhoon?" Veltar whispered. "You mean this disaster has a name? This has happened before?" "Oh, sure," Ji-hoon replied casually. "We get several typhoons every year. This one doesn't look too bad. Maybe category 2 or 3? Kix's voice shook as she spoke. "You classify these planetary catastrophes by intensity?" "Well, yeah," Ji-hoon said. "You have to know how strong they are to prepare properly. Category 1 is pretty mild, but Category 5 can be really destructive." Neth could barely form words. You have experienced worse storms than this?" "Last year we had a Category 4 that was pretty intense," Ji-hoon remembered. "But the university has good building codes, so we were fine." The aliens could not believe what they were hearing. Not only did humans survive these massive storms, but they had built permanent structures designed to withstand them. They planned for regular disasters and continued their normal lives anyway. Hyeri arrived next, wearing waterproof clothes and carrying extra gear. "Ready for our mountain trip?" she asked excitedly. "The weather makes hiking more interesting." "Mountain trip?" Veltar asked weakly. "During a planetary catastrophe?" "It's just rain and wind," Hyeri explained. "Actually, typhoons can create some beautiful cloud formations in the mountains. I brought extra rain gear for everyone." The aliens looked at the protective clothing she offered. It was thin fabric that could not possibly protect against a major weather disaster. But the humans seemed to think it was adequate protection. Taewon joined them, carrying his heavy backpack and looking eager to leave. "I'm excited to see how the storm affects the rock formations," he said. "Weathering processes happen much faster during intense weather events." "You study geological destruction in real time?" Neth asked in amazement. "It's the best way to understand how landscapes change," Taewon replied. "You can read about erosion in books, but seeing it happen is much more educational." Despite all their fears, the aliens agreed to join the hiking trip. They could not let their human hosts go into danger alone, even though they were sure they were all going to die. The journey to Hallison Mountain was terrifying for the visitors. Rain pounded against their transport vehicle and wind rocked it from side to side, but the human driver seemed relaxed, occasionally commenting on the nice storm and how it would clear the air. When they reached the mountain base, The aliens were shocked to see other humans beginning hikes despite the terrible weather. Some were even smiling and taking pictures of the storm clouds. "Are all humans completely insane?" Veltar whispered to his companions. The hiking trail was muddy and slippery from the rain. The aliens struggled to move in their heavy protective suits while the humans walked easily in their light rain gear. Every gust of wind made the visitors panic, but the humans just leaned into it and kept walking. Halfway up the mountain, something even worse happened. The temperature began to drop and white crystals started falling from the sky. The aliens had never seen anything like it before. "Ice is falling from the atmosphere," Kik screamed in terror. "The planet is trying to freeze us." The humans stopped and looked up at the falling crystals with wonder and delight. "Snow!" Hieri exclaimed. "How beautiful. It's early this year." "Snow?" Veltar repeated in confusion. "Frozen water crystals," Taiwan explained. "It happens when temperatures drop below 0 degrees Celsius. Pretty common in mountains during cold weather." The aliens watched in horror as the humans held out their hands to catch the falling ice crystals. Some humans even opened their mouths to eat them. "You are consuming frozen atmospheric precipitation," Neth observed in shock. "Snowflakes taste clean and fresh," Jihoon said happily. "Try it." The aliens absolutely refused to remove any part of their protective suits to taste falling ice. They were sure the humans had lost their minds completely. As they climbed higher, the aliens learned more disturbing facts about the mountain they were on. Taiwan explained that Halasan was a volcano that could potentially erupt again someday. The humans had built hiking trails on an active geological weapon. "The last eruption was about 1,000 years ago," Taiwan said informatively. "Volcanic soil creates amazing biodiversity, which is why this mountain has such unique ecosystems." "You are walking on a delayed explosion," Veltar pointed out. "All mountains on Earth are either volcanic, tectonic, or erosional," Taiwan replied. "Volcanic mountains are actually some of the most stable because the eruptions release pressure gradually over time." The aliens could not understand this logic. Humans seemed to find safety in the most dangerous possible circumstances. Near the summit, the weather grew even worse. The wind was so strong that the aliens could barely stand up in their heavy suits. But the humans moved carefully and steadily, clearly experienced with such conditions. "This is perfect weather for seeing cloud formation processes," Hieri observed, taking pictures of the storm system below them. "You can actually watch the precipitation cycles in real time." "Perfect weather?" Kix repeated faintly. "Well, perfect for studying meteorology," Hieri clarified. "Clear days are nice, but you don't learn much about atmospheric dynamics when nothing is happening." From the mountaintop, the aliens could see the full scope of the storm system. It covered hundreds of kilometers and contained enough energy to power entire alien civilizations. Yet the humans seemed to consider it a minor weather event. "Look how the typhoon spiral creates different pressure zones," Jihoon pointed out educational details. "You can see the eye wall forming in the distance." "Eye wall?" Nath asked nervously. "The center of the storm," Taiwan explained. "If it passes over us, we'll have a period of calm weather before the backside of the storm hits." The aliens realized that humans did not just survive these disasters. They understood them scientifically and could predict their behavior. They had turned planetary catastrophes into learning opportunities. On the way down the mountain, the aliens experienced even more impossible phenomena. They walked through clouds that soaked them with moisture. They felt temperature changes as they descended through different atmospheric layers. They saw lightning in the distance and heard thunder that made their equipment shake. But the humans treated all of these deadly experiences as educational and beautiful. They pointed out interesting cloud formations and explained how different weather systems interacted with the mountain's geography. By the time they returned to campus, the aliens were exhausted and completely overwhelmed. They had survived a typhoon, climbed an active volcano, experienced frozen precipitation, and walked through clouds. According to everything they knew about safe living, they should all be dead. But the humans seemed energized by the experience. They talked excitedly about what they had seen and learned. They were already planning future trips to experience different weather phenomena. That evening, as the storm continued outside, the aliens tried to process what they had experienced. On their worlds, weather was controlled and predictable. Temperature never varied more than a few degrees. Atmospheric pressure was always stable. Precipitation was scheduled and gentle. But humans lived with constantly changing conditions that would kill most species. They had learned to not just survive these changes, but to find them interesting and beautiful. They studied disaster as science and treated catastrophe as adventure. Veltar recorded his observations. Human relationship with their environment defies all known biological principles. They seek out dangerous conditions and appear to grow stronger from exposure to them. Kix wrote, "These beings do not fear their planet's violent weather. They embrace it and use it for education and recreation. Their adaptation strategies are beyond our understanding." Neth noted, "Humans appear to have evolved alongside planetary chaos. What we consider emergencies, they consider normal variations in their environment." The three aliens fell asleep that night to the sound of wind and rain outside their windows. For the first time, they began to understand why other species called Earth a hellworld, but they were also beginning to suspect that the real story was. The fourth week of their visit brought the aliens deeper into human society. They were beginning to understand that everything they had seen so far was just the surface of human adaptation to their impossible world. Today, Hieri had planned to show them something. She called normal city life the aliens followed their human guides into Seoul's subway system during what humans called rush hour. Nothing could have prepared them for what they encountered. Thousands of humans moved through underground tunnels in organized chaos. They walked quickly through narrow passages, climbed up and down moving stairs, and packed themselves into metal containers that moved at terrifying speeds through dark tunnels. This is how most humans travel to work every day, Hieri explained as they squeezed into a crowded subway car. Veltar's crystal body was pressed against dozens of other beings. "So many life forms in such a small space," he whispered in panic. "The risk of disease transmission must be enormous. We have immune systems that handle it," Jehun said calmly. "Actually, exposure to different microorganisms helps keep our immunity strong." Kix watched through her protective suit as humans stood calmly, while their transport shook and swayed through the underground tunnels. "They are traveling through the planet's interior at high speeds," she observed with amazement. "It's just the subway," Taewon replied. "Much faster than walking, and it avoids surface traffic." The aliens learned that humans had built an entire transportation network beneath their city. They had carved tunnels through solid rock and created a system that moved millions of people every day. To accomplish this, they had to work in underground spaces that would terrify most species. When they emerged above ground, Hieri led them through the busy streets. The aliens observed humans navigating between fast-moving vehicles, crossing at precisely timed intervals, and somehow avoiding collision despite the apparent chaos. "Your species has remarkable spatial awareness," Neth commented as he watched humans weave through traffic. "You kind of develop it living in cities," Hieri said. "You learn to read movement patterns and anticipate what others will do." They visited a construction site where humans were building a new skyscraper. The aliens watched in horror as workers moved around at great heights, apparently comfortable with the risk of falling. Some humans were welding metal with equipment that produced dangerous temperatures and bright light. "Those humans are working in conditions that would be fatal to most species," Veltar observed. "Construction work is definitely dangerous," Taewon agreed. "But humans have developed safety protocols and protective equipment that make it manageable." The aliens noticed that humans had solutions for every environmental challenge. They wore special clothing for different weather conditions. They used tools to work with materials that would damage their natural biology. They had created artificial environments that protected them while still allowing them to function in dangerous conditions. That afternoon, Hieri took them to her favorite place, the university library. But this was not just any library. She led them to a special section dedicated to human history and survival. "I want to show you something that might help explain how humans developed these abilities," she said, pulling books from the shelves. The aliens looked at images and descriptions of human history. What they saw made their previous experiences seem mild by comparison. Hieri showed them pictures of ice ages that had covered much of the planet in frozen water for thousands of years. "Humans survived several ice ages," she explained. "Our ancestors lived through global cooling events that wiped out many other species." "Your species survived planetary freeze cycles?" Kix asked in disbelief. "Not just survived," Hieri continued. "We developed new technologies and spread to every continent during the ice ages. Cold weather actually helped humans migrate to new areas." She showed them information about volcanic eruptions that had blocked sunlight for years at a time. The Toba supervolcanic eruption happened about 70,000 years ago. It nearly caused human extinction, but we survived and recovered. Veltar studied the images of massive volcanic destruction. Your ancestors lived through geological catastrophes that would sterilize most worlds. Humans are really good at adapting, Yeri said simply. When the environment changes, we find new ways to survive and thrive. Taewon joined them and added more historical information. We've also survived asteroid impacts, massive floods, droughts that lasted decades, and diseases that killed large portions of the population. Each disaster taught us something new, Jihoon added. We developed better tools, stronger communities, and more effective survival strategies. The aliens began to understand that human resilience was not accidental. It was the result of surviving thousands of years of planetary disasters that would have destroyed most civilizations. Neth studied images of human cities built in impossible locations. You construct permanent settlements in flood zones, earthquake regions, and volcanic areas. Why do you choose such dangerous places? Often because they're also the most resource-rich areas, Taewon explained. River valleys flood, but they have fertile soil. Volcanic regions are dangerous, but the soil is excellent for growing food. Coastlines have storms and tsunamis, but they provide access to ocean resources. So you accept risk in exchange for opportunity, Veltar observed. Exactly, Yeri said. And over time, we've gotten better at managing the risks while keeping the benefits. They spent hours looking through human history books. The aliens saw evidence of humans living in every possible environment on their planet. Deserts, frozen polar regions, high mountains, dense jungles, small islands surrounded by violent oceans. Humans had found ways to survive and build communities everywhere. Your species has colonized every biome on your planet, Kix noted with amazement. Most species adapt to one specific environment and stay there. Humans are generalists, Jihoon explained. We can eat many different foods, survive in various climates, and adapt our behavior to different conditions. That evening, they attended a special lecture about human space exploration. The aliens learned that humans were already sending missions to other planets and planning permanent settlements in space. You are trying to spread to other worlds? Neth asked. Space is the ultimate hostile environment, the professor explained. But humans have always been drawn to explore and settle new frontiers. Our experience adapting to Earth's challenges helps us prepare for even more extreme environments. The aliens realized that humans were not content to simply survive on their Hellworld. They were using their adaptation skills to spread to even more impossible places. After the lecture, they walked back to their dormitory through the quiet campus. The aliens observed humans jogging in the evening air, studying outside under artificial lights, and socializing in the unpredictable outdoor environment. Your people seem genuinely happy, Veltar observed, despite living in constant danger. I don't think most of us see it as constant danger, Yeri replied thoughtfully. This is just our normal environment. We've evolved to handle these conditions. But more than that, Taewon added, I think humans actually need some level of challenge and change to feel satisfied. Too much safety and predictability makes us restless. We thrive on problem solving, Jihoon agreed. When we encounter new challenges, we get excited about finding solutions. The aliens spent that night thinking about everything they had learned. Human resilience was not just about surviving disasters. It was about growing stronger through adversity, learning from every challenge and turning problems into opportunities. They began to understand why human colonies were the most successful in the galaxy. Other species avoided difficult environments, but humans sought them out. Where other beings saw impossible conditions, humans saw interesting puzzles to solve. Veltar recorded his thoughts. Humans do not merely tolerate their harsh environment. They have been shaped by it into something uniquely adaptable and resourceful. Kix wrote, These beings have turned survival into an art form. They do not just endure challenges, they transform them into advantages. Neth noted, Human happiness seems directly connected to their ability to overcome difficulties. They appear to need obstacles in order to feel truly alive. The three aliens were beginning to realize that Earth was not just a hellworld that humans happened to survive on. Earth had created humans, and humans had learned to love their challenging, unpredictable, dangerous home. This relationship between species and planet was unlike anything else in the known galaxy. Tomorrow would bring their final lessons about humanity. But already, the aliens knew that their understanding of life itself had been forever changed by these remarkable beings who had turned a Hellworld into home. The final week of the exchange program arrived with a mixture of excitement and sadness. The three alien visitors had experienced more in their time on Earth than they had in their entire previous lives. Now they faced the challenge of understanding what it all meant. Jihoon found them sitting together in the campus garden, watching human students play sports in the open air. The aliens no longer panicked at every gust of wind or temperature change, though they still wore their protective suits. Tomorrow you'll be presenting your reports to the Galactic Education Consortium, he said, sitting down beside them. Are you ready? Veltar's crystal body flickered thoughtfully. I am not certain we can explain what we have learned. Our own people will think we have malfunctioned. What have you learned? Yeri asked as she joined them. She had become genuinely curious about the alien perspective on human life. Kix moved her tentacles slowly inside her water suit. We came here expecting to study how humans barely survive on a dangerous planet, she said carefully. But that is not what we found. What did you find? Taewon asked, settling down with his usual heavy backpack. We found that you do not survive your planet, Neth replied, his gaseous form swirling with emotion. You dance with it. The humans looked puzzled, so the aliens tried to explain what they had discovered. On my homeworld, Veltar began, everything is carefully controlled. Temperature never changes. Weather follows exact patterns. We have eliminated all uncertainty from our environment. That sounds peaceful, Jihoon said. It is peaceful, Veltar agreed, but it is also empty. Watching humans live with constant change and challenge, I realize we may have lost something important when we eliminated all risk from our lives. Kix continued the explanation. My people live in perfectly calm oceans. The water never moves unexpectedly. But seeing humans surf waves and swim in wild seas, I understand now that movement and uncertainty can be beautiful. We thought chaos was the enemy of civilization, Neth added. But humans have shown us that chaos can be a teacher, a source of strength, and even a form of art. The humans listened quietly as their alien friends shared their revelations. Your people do not just tolerate your harsh world, Veltar explained. You have fallen in love with its challenges. You seek out difficulty because it makes you feel more alive. I never thought of it that way, Harry said softly. But maybe you're right. Some of my happiest memories are from the most challenging experiences. That is what we do not understand, Kix admitted. How did your species learn to find joy in hardship? Taewon considered the question carefully. I think maybe because we don't have a choice, he said finally. Earth is the only home we've ever known. We had to learn to love it as it is, or we would have been miserable forever. But it is more than acceptance, Neth observed. You actively seek out new challenges. You explore dangerous places and try difficult things even when you could choose safety. That's true, Jihoon agreed. I could study marine biology in controlled laboratory environments. But I prefer working in the ocean because it's unpredictable and exciting. The aliens spent the evening walking around campus with their human friends, trying to absorb final lessons about Earth life. They watched students playing basketball in the wind, couples sitting outside despite changing weather, and night joggers running through the darkness. You trust your planet, Veltar realized suddenly. Despite all its dangers, you believe it will not truly harm you. I guess we do, Harry said, surprised by the insight. We know bad things can happen, but we also know that life continues. Our planet is difficult, but it's not malicious. Your world created you, Kix observed, and you have learned to trust that creation process. The next morning, the aliens prepared for their departure and final presentations. Each had spent days writing reports that would challenge everything the galaxy believed about Earth and humanity. The presentation took place via long-distance communication with the Galactic Education Consortium. Representatives from dozens of worlds watched as the three students shared their experiences. Veltar spoke first, his crystal body shining brightly with conviction. Honored colleagues, we came to study how humans survive on a Hellworld. But we learned that the question itself was wrong. Earth is not trying to kill humans. It created them. And in creating them, it gave the galaxy something precious. A species that grows stronger through challenge and finds beauty in chaos. The alien audience listened in stunned silence as he continued. We call Earth a hellworld because we fear change and uncertainty. But humans have shown us that change is not the enemy of life. It is life's greatest teacher. Kix presented next, her tentacles moving gracefully as she spoke. My fellow aquatic beings, we pride ourselves on our calm, controlled oceans. But I have seen humans ride waves that would terrify us. And I have learned that moving water is not dangerous. It is dancing. Humans do not fight their environment. They partner with it, she paused, letting her words sink in. They call Earth a hellworld. But I have seen humans make it paradise through sheer determination to find joy in whatever conditions they face. Finally, Neth addressed the consortium, his gaseous form pulsing with excitement. Esteemed representatives, we have spent millennia creating perfect, controlled environments for our civilizations. We eliminated weather, regulated temperature, and removed all uncertainty from our lives. We believed this was the highest achievement of intelligent species. But humans have shown us another path, he continued. They have learned to thrive in chaos, to find strength in struggle, and to discover beauty in unpredictability. We feared the death world would destroy us. Instead, it taught us what it means to truly live. The reaction from the galactic audience was immediate and intense. Some representatives dismissed the reports as impossible. Others accused the students of being influenced by human propaganda. But many listened thoughtfully to these new perspectives on Earth and humanity. Are you suggesting, asked a representative from a sterile, controlled world, that our perfectly regulated environments are somehow inferior to this chaotic hell world? Not inferior, Veltar replied carefully, but perhaps incomplete. You have achieved perfect safety, but humans have achieved perfect adaptation. They are ready for anything the universe can present. Which is why, Kix added, human colonies succeed in environments where other species fail. They do not need perfect conditions. They create success from whatever conditions they find. The presentation continued for hours, with the alien students answering questions and sharing detailed observations about human society. They described humans swimming in wild oceans, climbing dangerous mountains, eating food that burns their mouths, and building cities in disaster zones. But more importantly, they explained how these seemingly insane behaviors actually demonstrated remarkable intelligence and adaptability. Humans had learned to work with their planet's chaos instead of fighting against it. As the formal presentation ended, the three students returned to their human friends for a final farewell dinner. The mood was bittersweet. They had formed genuine friendships but knew they might never meet again. Will you miss Earth? Harry asked as they shared one last meal together. I will miss the surprises, Veltar admitted. On my world, I know exactly what every day will bring. Here, each day brought new wonders and new challenges. I will miss the movement, Kix said. Your oceans taught me that stillness is not always peaceful. Sometimes movement is more beautiful. I will miss the storms, Neth added. Your weather showed me that order is not the only form of beauty. Chaos can be beautiful too. The humans smiled at these unexpected compliments to their hell world. And what will you tell people about humans? Jihoon asked. That you are not conquerors from a death world, Veltar replied. You are gardeners who have learned to cultivate life in impossible places. That you are not warriors who fight your planet, Kix added. You are dancers who have learned to move with its rhythms. That you are not survivors who endure hardship, Neth concluded. You are artists who have learned to paint with chaos and create beauty from challenge. As the aliens prepared to leave the next morning, they realized their time on Earth had changed them forever. They would return to their safe, controlled worlds, but they would never again see perfect order as the only path to happiness. Veltar had learned that some uncertainty makes life more interesting. Kix had discovered that movement and change can be beautiful. Neth had found that storms can be as magnificent as calm skies. But perhaps most importantly, all three had learned that love, real deep love for one's world and one's life, does not require perfect conditions. Humans had taught them that love grows strongest when it embraces both beauty and chaos, both joy and challenge. As their ship lifted off from Earth's surface, the three aliens looked down at the planet that had challenged everything they thought they knew about life. The swirling clouds, the moving oceans, and the changing landscapes no longer looked like threats to civilization. They looked like, home to the most remarkable species in the galaxy, beings who had learned to love a hell world so completely that they had transformed. it into paradise through the simple act of calling it home. The story of their visit would spread throughout the galaxy, slowly changing how other species viewed both Earth and humanity. Some would continue to